Hey guys, just figured I should show this little interaction system in this document. You'll notice there's a couple issues with it just because I'm not doing like real UI stuff. You can see a proximity and a click interaction or a specific interaction overlapping here, but as soon as I'm not looking at it, the click me goes away. These are super basic. They're not super fancy. If I flip the cube over, it'll fall on the side of it, that kind of stuff. Um, but with what's outlined in this document, there's a basic click interaction. And if I press the proximity interaction, it changes the color. So if we go over here, you'll see the colors changing on that cube. But if I click it, it'll make that one launch or that one launch, whatever. In that kind of way, more or less just proof of concept that this system does work. You can't see it, I should actually probably add some print strings. But if I swap to a different tool, which I just have on some debug keys, it goes away. I don't know why oh, I do know why. Okay, there's a little bug. That's an easy fix. It cleared the proximity as well when it should have only cleared the specific. And that's actually really easy to fix. Just didn't do it. Now it'll be back, but it still cleared the E. Okay, yeah, that's simple bug I'll fix, but just general proof of concept, needs some cleaning up, I'm sure, and some finessing, and like these interactions are just random interactions. But you can see like that when it fell over and now it's on the side of it. This happens to do with like how I'm doing the widget thing. Because they're real basic widgets. They're not like a widget component or like a UI component, which would be a little more of a better approach to the UI. I just needed some basic UI to show you that it does work. Interactions happen and not. Cool. Just to walk through this. This is all outlined in the document. There have been some changes since the last time, or since some of those pictures were added. There's basically two things, or a small set of things that happen. When the game starts, you enable the interaction system. That's this function here. Basically, it just checks to make sure those timer handles are available. They're not assigned. It calls some timers that are the loops for a click interaction and a proximity interaction. Each one of those does some basic stuff, like it does a line trace along from the camera center and the forward vector. If it hits something, it does this stuff. If it doesn't hit anything, it clears some stuff. If there's nothing to clear, it does nothing. If the last hit and the same hit are the same, don't do anything. Just keep returning what you're already returning. If the hits are different, clear the UI on the old object, summon a new UI on the new object, and pass along the current tool with that. Proximity is more or less the same. I did it in a multi-trace just so that it doesn't just get the first object it hits, because it might not always be the right object because of like world directionality and where it's facing, the rotation of the sphere, all this kind of stuff. I think it biases towards whatever would be like considered north in the engine. So basically, if we find an object in our proximity, we do this, which is just kind of a funky way of getting all the actors out of the hit results, just so we can check a nearest, and then putting only that hit actor's proximity hit data down the chain. And then we check if that's the same or different than the last one. If they are the same, just keep returning the proximity hit so we can do an interaction. If they aren't the same, we just clean up some UI and add some new UI. If there was no hit, clean some stuff up. Real simple. If there's nothing to clean up, do nothing. Just return nothing. Return null. These are the two interactions that this is kind of based off of. Basically, we make sure that we're trying to hit a valid actor. This step might actually not even be necessary because we have an interaction hit that's valid, but this is the way of validating the interaction hit too. And we pass that interaction hit in the tool along. Same with the proximity. No difference there except for the triggering mechanism, um, and that a click interaction is, I currently have it set up as continuous, so it'll just keep firing over and over and over and over again as you press it. And then the proximity interaction is just like a single interaction, which is only fires once. You can do more complex stuff with that if you'd like. Like if you were to add one more interaction type, it would be like a press and hold interaction. You could take that from like a click interaction. Instead of being triggered, it would have to do with like the started, ongoing, and canceled instead. So it would be like this thing started, then as it's ongoing, update the value on the UI based on like elapsed seconds or triggered seconds, whichever one it is. I'd have to look into it. And when it's canceled, what does it do? It cleans some stuff up, resets the UI basically. And if it's completed, do the interaction action, that kind of stuff. And then there's some basic things. So when we swap a tool, which is just all these debugs, we just have a current tool enum here. We do a couple of things. We call the update current tool. If there's no change, just don't do anything. Just ignore it. Why bother? Just stop it there. If it is different, go ahead and set the new current tool to whatever tool you've pressed and call some UI stuff. This is where that bug is that sometimes we shouldn't clear these both. We should only clear one or the other, and that has to be determined by some other data. But the basic layout is a super simple interaction UI interface, and it's got 4 functions. Ignore this one, I was testing something out with it. But you've got your click, your proximity, and then you've got your 2 UIs that are related to that. And then you have your interactable objects. It's just been rerouted as a static mesh. There's some basic collision channel stuff, quick interaction, proximity interaction. If you don't know how to set that, it's just in the project settings under trace, new trace channel. Default it to ignore because usually it's only for specific things, unless you're wanting every object to have a response to that channel, which there are reasons for that, but not really. Like maybe like a bullet trace or something. You maybe want to have everything have a response to that. But in this case, we don't give a shit, so we don't. You have no basic functions doing anything. You have a general interaction response, which is just, dead simple. It's anything out of this execution pin is going to be a proximity interaction. And then you have a tool-based response, which can be done in 2 ways. Right here I'm showing with the switch. So this would be the code you'd set in the child object would be what kind of tool does it interact with. So you could do like knife objects or like knife interactables or hammer interactables or whatever. And then it would check off of a switch, or you could do it from like an interacting tools array, and this object interacts with the none channel, or like I could say maybe it interacts with the none or the knife channel, all this kind of stuff. And then just some random interaction logic. This is just setting the world location up by whatever 20 units every time you click it, which is what I was doing as a basic launch, even though there's a launch function, whatever. There's some basic UI logic. Basically, start with the general. The general is it checks, is it enabled? Is it being told to be on? And is it currently not visible? If it is told to be on and currently not visible, it turns on. If it's told to disable, it turns off. If it's this is where the logic problem is happening with this right here. It's being told to enable and it's currently on, so it's being turned off. I'll have to think that through a little bit, but that's fine. That's real basic. And then with a tool, you add one more node that checks the current tool versus uh, basically the current tool, and if it's in the tool array, or you could do this with a switch as well. You could do a switch on each tool, and you would just route basically, if you had none tool, you'd route it to always turn on and do the same kind of check as this, and then everything else would route to off, which, you know, is one way to handle it. Or just do it with like checking a particular tool, you know, if it's equal to, you know, whatever. Like we could actually make this equal enum and then do it this way, and as long as if it's equal to a knife or a hammer or whatever, you could do it that way. All adds up to the same kind of implementation. If you want to interact with a component, it's kind of along the same lines. If a component has UI, it gets a little more complicated because the UI isn't currently getting the hit result, so you'd have to pass that along in here too. But other than that, it would basically just be taking the interacting hit and doing the hit component, and then doing equals whatever. You know, you could do like just add a static mesh. You could do equals static mesh 1. If that's true, you do this. If it's not true, you do other things. It gets complex if you're doing like a full keyboard. Let's say if you had a keyboard with 7, you know, whatever, 5, 6, 7 rows, and then, you know, 30 columns, you might want to have a way of gathering all those into like on the construction, gathering those into like an array of some kind and checking against the whole array. Like, does, you know, whatever actor array contain the hit object would be like the way to do it, but that would be a specialized item or a specific you know, child of this object. Other than that, it's really, this is what a basic interaction system looks like. There's nothing to this. And I needed to get it out of my body that like I'm not crazy, that this can be done in a very simple way. I mean, part of it's a little bit complex, I guess. You know, if you look at some of the first person character stuff, it's a little complex, but it's, you know, what I wrote like 5 events, you know, 1, 2, 3, and then 2 functions. So 3 events, 2 functions, 5 objects. And this is like in progress, just basic, clear up some data and disable some UIs. Yeah, it's that simple. And this could still let you do, like, in regards to our current project, this could let you do things with a cargo box, where if a cargo was built off of a static mesh that's the main body, and then it's made up of whatever 4 wall components and a lid and an inside component, you could check against the interaction with the tool, and then what is it going to do? Like, and then it would interface with different systems. You know, it would add an overlay, or it would add like a response, or like an item. It can interact with the item system, where it calls the item system or item manager and spawns an item at a specific location that could be specified and tuned. It could easily do all the hammer interactions on the walls, or if the component that was hit was a wall and you have a hammer, it would do the hammer like the hammer interaction logic. If you had a hit on the inside and you had gloves like we used to, it would search the inside. But if you didn't have gloves, it would do nothing. It wouldn't let you interact with it. Or you could even have some kind of feedback to the player saying, equip gloves first, you know. Real simple. Each one of those kind of specialized objects, like a cargo would be a specialized object, would be easy to write. And then you could still do this like with stations, where you could have like a general station parent, which would take in the the UI hit and display UI, and then you'd have like two more interactions. You'd have like a mouse wheel up, mouse wheel down, or like D-pad up, D-pad down, or whatever the inputs are, and you would have those in like a separate uh, input manager. What are those called? What are those called? Um, I'm curious now. I can't think of the input on input. The IMCs, the input mapping context. That's right. The input mapping context. You could have that turn on in the player if the object that's hit is a station or has a station tag, because then you would want to add some extra contextualized input, which would be like the mouse wheel up, mouse wheel down, depending on if the object is a single like type, a single interaction, or if it's got like a list. Like with our background check machine, you have three options there. When you interact with it, you could interact with it. It would enable your input mapping context based on that object being, uh, a kind with a menued item, whatever you want to call that. And then that would allow you to do the scroll up, scroll down. And then when you exit, when you escape out of the interaction, it would just do a little bit of cleanup and reset some stuff. It would be that easy, it's not complicated stuff. You just got to think through some logic and try not to shovel shit on shit. Because that's my new phrase in life. It seems to be, is like, try not to shovel shit onto shit. And this might be shit, so I'd love to get some feedback on it, because there's plenty of ways to do this. Like, this isn't the only way to do it. This is just, I think, a more comprehensive or comprehensible or understandable approach to an interaction system. And I think that is super useful for making like a good project or a good product, if you want to think about it in terms of that. So that's a lot of food for thought for the next time we start a new project. Maybe we just steal this and retool it, because like, I don't give a shit if you use this code. If you see this and we don't work together, feel free to use it. Like, it took, it probably took me longer to do a write-up for it than it did to actually write it. And then a little bit of testing to clean some stuff up and do some, some debugging and find where my logic was failing. And this could be, expanded upon, like the UI stuff. Like, instead of, like, this is currently just setting a UI widget that has some basic stuff set to it. Like, it's a world space item, or screen space item, so it spins wherever you are. So technically you can see it through objects, but you could add some more logic. Like, let's see here. Let's see if we can. Can I set here? There we go. Yeah, you can see it through objects, but maybe we want to do it in world space instead of screen space. And I think this should just work. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. Where am I? There am I. If I set that to world, what happens if I do that? Oh, did something interesting there. I'm not seeing my click me's. Oh, okay. Well, it would need a little more logic if it's a world space item, and that resolution is garbage. But if I click it, it launches, and if I turn sideways, you can't see it, and it's not two-sided, so you can't see it. But even that would be like really easy, and these are just super basic, like a border, a text, nothing even happening in terms of like an actual UI system. These are just widgets added to the world, and could easily be expanded upon. How do I do cylinder on it? What does that look like if I give it two-sided? Now I'm just playing around because it's silly. It's two-sided. There it is. happens if I do that? Click me. Oh, it just. Oh. Okay. Well, you can do all sorts of weird things with Unreal Engine. Let's change that back before I forget about it. Not that it matters. That way, things are just kind of nice. And I just made a very generic interactable object. I could easily like come in here and we could just change the static mesh out for a teddy bear or a rubber duck or a machine gun or whatever, and it'll let you interact with it. Obviously, I'm sure there's special objects, and those special objects should be a child of this, and basically all of this stuff should be cold. And well, you could set like up a generic system and then never call the parent version in a child object. That always is a good way of just like overriding it. Or clean this out and just leave the basic interaction events to be implemented on child objects, and then just have some basic data set up on these. Because I'm sure if I go look in the world, you can see there's probably where is it? Default values, maybe. Maybe I'd make a child of it, and then I would see some stuff. Or I need to set some variables to, like this needs to probably be exposed on spawn, instance editable. I think just instance editable, but if we see that, let's see, where does that get? That. Okay. Sometimes I gotta go look at stuff. There it is. Yeah, the defaults. So like that kind of stuff, like you can just mark it as, I think, just instance editable. We don't even need to necessarily put expose and spawn on it. I wonder if that changed. Yeah, that's still there. And that just sort of lets you do plenty of things on it. But yeah, that's probably a longer video than I needed to go into. This game dev stuff, it sure isn't rocket science. and the more we get in our own way, the more frustrating a project grows to be. I'm disappointed that I joined the project so late, because I feel like a lot of these things could have been caught earlier. Alternatively, I've also looked at my own code in the project. I'm disappointed in it because I've kind of just stacked shit on shit there on my own code. And part of that's kind of not because I couldn't do it better. It's part of it's that I just wanted to get it done. And I think that's kind of maybe a bad mindset to have in a project in general, is to not just want to get something done, but want to do it right. I think that's kind of a big lesson that I've taken away from our project, is if you don't care about it, it's going to get unmanageable and nasty. And if it's nasty, you're not going to want to work on it. And if you don't want to work on it, you're not going to work on it. And all of that goes into making a good product, I think. And I think that some food for thought for everybody. And clean blueprints really help. Like, this isn't necessarily the cleanest how it is, but the fact that these are just the interaction system, update interaction UI, that could probably actually be added into here. Just kind of keeping things tidy. Never hurt anybody. And then I have a psychotic standard of how I like things to be. And things get jostled because Unreal Engine adds comments however it wants to add them. It's not locked to the grid, which is annoying. Uh, but I really like having a standard flow of things. Uh, so usually I keep like a border of 2 on sub objects, and then a border of 3 on broad windows, and then try to keep things aligned to the grid. But every time you save it, you close it, you open it, it jostles everything around. So what's the point? Um, I think it's just kind of a work ethic thing. Is that 2? That's 2. Okay. Anyway, enough ranting from me. Just know that I just want us to make a good thing. I don't want us to make slop. I don't want us to make garbage. Like, we could sit here and churn out, real crappy games in 2 weeks, but I don't think anybody would be satisfied with that. Not us as, game developers, not customers as game players. I think that the world's missing high quality games right now. And I think part of the reason for that is people see it as a low hanging fruit for money. And if people play it, why bother making it good? But I think you should bother. I think we should all bother. And I think the flow is pretty clear, is that you should just make something. But then there's a very important next step, which is make it good. And then a final step, which is add what's missing and then repeat until you're at a game that has all the things it needs to have and isn't a mess and is fun to play. So like with this thing, it's missing it's missing the held interaction. And like that would be like the next thing. Like, this is good, this is working. I guess there's a couple bugs here, like with that, like clearing both of them when it should only clear the click me. Like that, if I fix that bug, this interaction system's good. But then it's got missing stuff. So then you add the next thing, the held interaction, which would be pretty simple. And then whatever that breaks, you fix that and make that good. And then maybe you'll go, this thing's still missing, I don't know, like a pause menu. And then you go, oh, okay, let's add that. Then you go, okay, well, that's missing. In the pause menu, it's missing like a save and a load. Okay, we'll add a basic save and a load system, which would be really easy. And just iterate on it, and don't stop going back and looking at code just because it works, because it'll only work to a certain point. If you never make it good, it'll just work to a certain point, or it won't do what you need it to do to add what's missing. And I think that's a very important point, is that it needs to have what's missing and not be a headache. All right, I think that's way longer of a video than I needed to do or wanted to do. So yeah, cool. I hope you guys enjoy this.